The bridge was neither long nor wide. It was a simple wooden structure spanning the narrow but deep gap between the disappointments of the past and the uncertainties of the future. Let me introduce myself. I am Lyle Jetterman, now 38 years old. I used to be known primarily as Gloria's husband, who is 36, and the father of Robert, 12, and Anna, 8. While this was a fulfilling family situation, it came with a significant set of responsibilities. To fulfill my duties as a husband and father, I had been working at Countryman Real Estate for 5 years before Gabriel Zelo bought the company from Bernie Schleifer. Real estate was neither my original career nor my preferred choice. I began my professional life after graduating from law school. By then, I had been married to Gloria for 3 years. She was pregnant when I graduated, and the job market for young lawyers was not very promising. However, Gloria's pregnancy provided a strong incentive for me to find a job that could support a family. My first job was with a law firm that specialized in representing banks in the closing of residential home loans. It wasn't my dream job, but it was a job nonetheless. While I was in law school, Gloria worked tirelessly as a bank teller to support us. She earned enough to cover the rent and put food on the table. I took on part-time work whenever I could to supplement her income. Loans and scholarships covered my tuition, but I was indebted to the Department of Education. With Gloria noticeably pregnant at my law school graduation, I accepted the job that was offered. This was the first of many compromises to meet the demands of married life. In those days, banks provided loans to individual home buyers for purchasing houses. Looking back, it was a gentleman's profession. I sat at the closing table to represent the lending bank during the finalization of a mortgage. The buyer paid the bank a fee of about $500 for my services. The law firm received that amount plus an additional $500 from the title insurance company, totaling a nice $1,000 earned for each home closing. The firm, of course, kept the money, and I received a tiny portion of it as my salary. It seems that all good things must come to an end, and honest ambition gets replaced by pure greed. Shortly after my wife, Gloria, gave birth to our second child, the small banks were devoured by the larger ones, which were then consumed by the giant banks. Retail loans became obsolete, and banking transformed into a wholesale business, scaling up to an industrial level. Every morning at work, I found a stack of home loan files that needed to be closed that day. The profits must have been enormous, but running between rooms for simultaneous house closings left me with an unsettling feeling that this pace couldn't be sustained. 7 years into my legal career, I had not made partner but had achieved the status of a private contractor. I earned my income on a piecework basis. At $75 per closing, I made a good living, considering I closed 7 or 8 loans a day, 5 or sometimes 6 days a week. But could this last? I had a persistent feeling of impending doom. Bernard Schleifer approached me. Bernie, as he preferred to be called, was looking for what he described as a smart kid with a law degree to join his company. His principal contract, Closer, was retiring to the Sun Belt, just as Bernie was looking to expand. Bernie's company, Countryman Real Estate, owned the deeds to the Scarlet Woods development. This development consisted of 100 approved sites, with a plan for 400 more. It was located 2 miles from the tech park, which housed the International Foundries chip plant. With 2,000 high-tech jobs in the pipeline, Bernie was well prepared. Schleifer was a builder and developer, not a salesman or a small-scale financier. If you needed to raise a couple of $1 million, by convincing a banker of your development vision, Bernie was your guy. However, he couldn't sell a housewife on upgrading to real stone countertops, or her husband on a variable rate mortgage. Surprisingly, when Bernie and I teamed up, it was a perfect match. I loved selling homes and was detail-oriented. I handled all the paperwork for closings and had learned the importance of profit centers from my previous employers. I convinced Bernie of the value in owning his own title company, home insurance agency, moving service, gardening service, and more. We quickly evolved into a full-service agency with a single goal: to sell more homes and capitalize on all related services. Bernie began building at a fast pace while I managed the office and everything else. Bernie handled the big deals and I took care of the smaller ones. He made the big money, and I was his well-paid employee. He foresaw the financial crash, recognizing Bear Stearns as just the tip of the iceberg, with Lehman Brothers Investment Bank being the ship that actually hit it. On the day the roof collapsed, Bernie was grinning. What goes up must come down, but real estate will always rise again. If we can get through this in decent shape, we'll be primed for a major expansion. Bernie believed the market would rebound. I tightened the belt and saved every penny, which he then invested in a larger, improved Countryman real estate. Bernie had just one issue. He was a big fish in a small pond, and he longed to swim in the ocean. One evening, over a drink after work, he broke the news. "I've sold out," he said. "What?" "Calm down. The new owner won't make any changes, at least not immediately." Once again, Bernie was right. When I met Gabe Zelo, my first impression was of his youth. He wasn't yet 30 and had managed to buy out Bernie. He was taller and younger than me, a handsome blonde Adonis. The very picture of a young business prodigy. I suppose I should have been envious of the younger man, but he was too charming and likable to resent. Plus, he was great to work for. Bernie was a man in his late 50s. Ambitious yet fundamentally cautious, he stood in stark contrast to Gabe, who thrived on taking risks and putting everything on the line. From the outset, it was clear that Gabe's deal to acquire Countryman real estate had stretched his resources thin. Gabe was more of a finance expert than a builder, more of a manager than a salesman. He loved making quick money, and as the real estate market rebounded, his gamble on Countryman was paying off. Bernie was heading to Florida, the high-stakes arena of real estate. I wished him luck the night before he left. "Come with me, kid," he said. "No, I can't. I'm not a kid anymore. I have a wife and 2 preteens to support," I replied. "Okay, but one day you might regret it," he said. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but I did check the job market. What was left of my old firm wasn't much. Stephen Pender, one of the younger partners, had managed to survive the crash. He was glad to hear from me, but he was offering a third of what I was currently making. So I put my nose to the grindstone to ensure Countryman stayed afloat. Overall, I was happy working for Gabe, as we called him. He treated me well and pretty much let me run the day-to-day operations of the office. Did I have doubts about him? Yes, but my only complaint about my boss was minor. Bernie's never went for a formal company Christmas party. Gabe, on the other hand, went all out. He booked one of the upscale Saratoga resort venues, even though it was their off-season, at a considerable cost. The resulting party on the first Saturday night in December was for the staff, contractors, bankers, and realtors. It was a lavish affair, and it was heavily attended. Gabe presided over it like a king. Well, it was his money, and maybe there was a legitimate business purpose to it all. My grievance arose around midnight, but had been building up all night. You see, I had arrived with the most attractive woman in the place on my arm. I married Gloria right after we graduated from college when we were both just 22. She took on a meaningless job to support us while I attended law school. I am forever grateful for her support, but she surprised me with the news of her pregnancy, having stopped taking birth control while I was studying for the bar exam. In the long run, the pregnancy may have been a blessing. We turned out to be good parents and continue to be so. While I was busy closing deals, Gloria took care of our toddlers and pursued her PhD in child psychology during the nights. Once our youngest child started school, Gloria returned to work, securing a job with the state DSS. She also began what I now call her running career. Gloria was what you might describe as plump, not truly fat unless compared to a very thin runway model. However, at 30, she shifted from swimming twice a week at the YWCA and chasing after our kids to embracing the solitude of long-distance running. Every morning, my wife would get up early to run 5 miles cross-country. In the evenings, she would do a half-hour of sprints. She has the best times among the local women runners. With only national competitors, beating her in local 5K and 10K races. She has competed in the New York City Marathon 3 times, finishing among the top 100 women. I'm far from being a couch potato. I hit the gym at least 3 times a week and aim for a 20-mile bike ride on summer weekends. However, I have over 5% body fat, and my physique is far from looking like it was sculpted by Michelangelo. I had supported Gloria in all her efforts, watching her rise before dawn and return drenched in sweat, while I took care of the kids. I was proud of my wife. So, when I walked into the Christmas party with this tall, raven-haired beauty on my arm, conversations paused and heads turned to see Gloria, the spectacular. Standing just over 6'2" in her 3-inch heels, she was my height. Her raven hair cascaded to her shoulders, which she braids into a ponytail when she runs, letting it flap provocatively behind her. That night it shimmered under the ballroom lights. Gloria had pulled out all the stops for the party. She wore a new form-fitting black dress. The scalloped neckline hinted at her cleavage, and the immodestly short hem showcased her fabulously long runner's legs. The dress accentuated her flat stomach and sculpted rear, making her an object of warm-blooded art. My wife was no longer the plump girl. She was the stunning woman on my arm. Gabe wasted no time greeting us and whisking Gloria away to dance. While I admit they made a striking pair, as he is taller and fitter than I am, his attention seemed to be crossing the line. Just before midnight, he stepped over and shared a passionate kiss with her under the mistletoe. I am not a jealous man. Yes, I have an attractive wife, but I trust her completely. We have endured many difficult times together, such as the years in law school, raising our children, and paying off student loans. We have faced illnesses, including a miscarriage. I feel sorry for couples who have never faced struggles together. I believe it is the hard times that bring you closer and strengthen your marriage. Gloria and I have suffered together, and we love each other deeply. Gloria had been drinking and was clearly enjoying the attention she received. I attributed it to the alcohol. I brought my wife home and nothing more was said. She acted as if nothing had happened. It was just too much drink, I told myself. 6 months later, Memorial Day weekend arrived. The past half year had been great for real estate. Countryman's numbers had soared, and the last week of May was the hottest market in a decade. The company's operating account was brimming with cash from home sales, all scheduled to be wired out on the first business day of June. We processed the checks and made electronic payments to the banks when the office reopened after the 3-day weekend. "Are you coming to the cabin for the weekend?" Gabe asked. Gabe had rented an Adirondack mountain lodge for Memorial Day weekend and had been talking about it nonstop for weeks. His invitation was extended to Gloria and me, but it was something I was keen to avoid. "I'm not sure what Gloria's plans are," I said, trying to deflect. "Oh, she's definitely coming. She's looking forward to it." I gave him a puzzled look. "We talked on the phone," he said quickly. I had doubts, but once he left, I called Gloria, and she was indeed very excited. That was probably my last chance to back out, but I couldn't see it clearly. I both loved and trusted Gloria. MapQuest informed me that getting to Gabe's place would be no easy feat. I drove my Honda Accord to the rental agency and picked up a 4-wheel drive SUV. According to the map, the last 20 miles would be on mountain roads, and the final 3 miles would be on a dirt track. Having been to the Adirondacks before, I knew they could be quite treacherous. Gabe's place was southwest of Saranac Lake. The drive took nearly 4 hours. The GPS coverage extended only up to the last 5 miles. We turned off the county road onto 2 isolated miles of semi-paved road ending in a wooden bridge. The bridge was narrow, yet appeared robust. Recently repaired, it spanned a ravine. The gap wasn't very wide, but it was quite deep. This type of landscape is typical in the Adirondacks, where the challenging terrain contributes to its untamed nature. As I crossed the bridge slowly, I wondered if there might be an alternate route, even though the GPS map indicated there were none. I felt like a mouse entering a trap, and wondered if there might be a cat lurking nearby. 3 miles further along the rough, unpaved road, we arrived at a 2-story lodge situated in a meadow on the mountainside, about 1,000 feet below the summit. Looking north, we could see a dozen Adirondack mountains. We had reached a secluded location where a lodge had been constructed to give the appearance of rustic charm. I parked the SUV in a well-kept area next to 3 similar but noticeably more upscale vehicles. Everything seemed brand new and meticulously maintained. The lodge itself was a modern log structure designed to look rustic, combining contemporary architecture with traditional aesthetics. It was a large, comfortable building pretending to be a 19th-century mountain retreat. The intention was to convey wealth, and Gabe had clearly gone all out to impress, though it was evident who his efforts were aimed at. Certainly not me. We were welcomed on the broad porch adorned with Adirondack chairs and matching decor by 6 people, 3 young men, including Gabe and 2 of his college friends. Ken Lewis, the shortest at about 5'10", was built like a weightlifter. In his late 20s, Ken was starting to bald and was less attractive than Gabe, though his muscular physique was evident through his tight t-shirt and cargo shorts. Glenn Sachs, the second college friend, stood about 6 feet tall with a lean build and curly blonde hair, looking more attractive than Ken. He had his arm around a blonde woman introduced as Sharon. She was a striking woman with significant curves and a full bust, appearing to be in her late 30s, making her at least 8 to 10 years older than Glenn. A slightly younger woman named Robin stood beside Ken, clearly associated with him. She was a petite brunette in her early 30s, neatly dressed with a great figure. The last member of the group was a tall woman with long auburn hair, Paula Henry. She had a striking appearance, described as handsome due to her sharp, not entirely feminine features. She exuded an air of intelligence and confidence, and it was clear she was the youngest of the women and a school friend of the boys. Everyone was extremely friendly and enthusiastic about our arrival, but the greeting felt a bit off. Gabe seemed to be primarily focused on welcoming my wife, with me being more of an afterthought, while his friend Paula gave me a look reminiscent of one you might reserve for a lab specimen before dissecting it. Dinner had been kept warm for us, so we quickly dropped off our bags in the second-floor bedroom assigned to us. Our small suite was adjacent to Gabe's master suite. We all gathered in the large living area, a sprawling 40x40-foot space combining living, dining, and play areas. At the big oak table, we enjoyed gourmet pre-packaged microwave dinners. The food was decent but required minimal effort, and it was certainly expensive. Wine was provided in ample quantities. I kept an eye on my drinking as much as possible while my host was constantly trying to refill my glass. After dinner, the group, now in high spirits, moved to the terrace to sit by the gas fire pit. Strong alcoholic beverages and prohibited substances were displayed there. I began to assess the situation through careful questioning and keen observation. At first glance, it seemed like a casual holiday weekend with my boss, his 2 friends, and their dates. However, it quickly became apparent that there was more to it. It only took a few minutes to learn that Robin had a fiancé somewhere else, and Sharon was married with 2 kids and a husband at home. Sharon and Robin, who worked together, were supposedly at a health spa for a girls' weekend. The infidelity was treated lightly and humorously. Paula kept giving me glances, and she seemed out of place in this group. Although you might assume she was with Gabe, she didn't seem bothered by his overt flirting with my wife. Gabe actually spent most of the night between Gloria and Paula, engaging mostly with Gloria. My attempts to strike up a conversation with Paula were met with only polite interest. She was clearly signaling that she wasn't interested in pursuing anything with me. Around midnight, I could sense that the cheerful, slightly tipsy partygoers were gearing up to head to the bedrooms to continue the evening's fun. However, they seemed to be waiting for something. Out of the blue, Gabe turned to me and said, "Lyle, you must be exhausted after the long drive." "Yes, dear, why don't you go upstairs to bed and I'll join you shortly," my wife Gloria responded. "Not before I have another drink," I said, grabbing the bottle. "Unless, of course, you're saving it, Gabe." I flashed a smile as I said this, though internally I was fuming at this guy who seemed intent on making a move on my wife. I was also puzzled by Gloria's behavior. She had been inseparable from him all night, just like at the Christmas party. Could she be smitten? Was my wife of 16 years developing a crush on my boss? That night was a waiting game, but I came out on top. Eventually, Gloria and I headed to the bedroom together. In the room assigned to us, Gloria slipped into the shower alone. I didn't attempt to join her. It seemed pointless as she was a bit distant. When she emerged from the shower, I quickly took my own. I expected her to be under the covers when I came out, but instead she was sitting on the edge of the bed. "Please," she said, patting the spot next to her. As I sat down, she turned to me and said, "I want to enjoy this weekend. Life has been tough for us, but I've worked so hard and I think I deserve a break." "I totally agree," I replied. "You have been a wonderful wife and mother in difficult times. You supported me when I was studying to be a lawyer, looked after the children on my small salary, and returned to school yourself. You've worked hard to achieve the amazing body you have, and you're still contributing to the development of our home. I am proud to be your husband." In response, she decided to make me feel good. That night, she was in no hurry to please me and asked for nothing in return. The morning light coming through the open blinds on the large bedroom window woke me up. Gloria usually got up long before me, going for a morning run. However, the consequences of yesterday's alcohol abuse were obvious. Getting out of bed, I opened the blinds and headed to the small bathroom with a shower. The bedroom was small, but with all the necessary amenities. I showered, shaved, and went downstairs before anyone else. I decided to explore the area before the others woke up. From the large room, I went out to the patio, where there was a place for a bonfire and a built-in outdoor barbecue. The courtyard turned into an elevated area with a small pool and sauna. Although swimming in the spring in these notoriously cold mountains might seem risky, when I approached the terrace, I realized that the entire area was heated. The higher slope of the mountain was covered with solar panels, which probably heated the pool and possibly the house. Walking through the veranda area, I came across a small shed. It was not used for animal husbandry, but was packed with ATVs, snowmobiles, and gardening equipment, including several small tractors. Passing by this building, I heard the murmur of a stream in the distance. The stream flowed about 20 yards from a locked barn with a small chimney on the roof. Looking through a small window, I saw a generator and barrels of fuel, which indicated that this shed stored fuel for power sports and had a generator in case of emergencies. Someone had clearly thought of everything. The place felt like its own isolated world, seemingly prepared for any situation. The stream was small and shallow, so small I thought that no fish could live in it, until I saw one leap out of the water. "Do you fish?" a voice asked from behind me. I turned around, surprised to see Paula standing there. "No, but I used to when I was younger and had more free time." "That's a shame. It might give you something to do this weekend." "Do you fish?" "No, like you. I don't have the time." "How about breakfast and a hike up the mountain instead? It seems a waste to come all this way and not reach the top," she suggested. Paula had already started the coffee in the stainless steel brewer. The kitchen was stocked with microwavable breakfast options, and we both chose instant oatmeal. Nobody else was up yet. "They'll probably sleep in, so how about that hike?" she asked with a smile. Paula seemed to know exactly where the trail began, leading us right to it. The summit didn't look too far off, but an hour later, it still felt just as distant as when we started. "Are you sure you want to go all the way to the top?" I asked. "Why? Are you going to back out, old man?" she replied. "I was just wondering what the others will think if they don't find us." "Don't worry, I doubt our absence will be a big deal." When we finally reached the top, the sun was nearly directly overhead, indicating it was close to noon. The mountaintop was somewhat underwhelming. It was a relatively flat expanse with smooth edges. 2 old wooden benches were placed facing east, overlooking the lodge and a series of peaks to the south and east. A haze obscured the distant view, although the air was crisp and refreshing. At midday, a cool breeze blew, but it was quite pleasant. My companion settled down, clearly intent on enjoying whatever view there was. "Do you mind if I sit here?" she asked. "I'd like to rest before we head back down." "No. An old man like me could use a break," I replied. This prompted a smile from her. "So Glenn is a broker, Ken a banker, and Gabe a developer. We talked all night, but I never caught what you do?" She gave me a thoughtful look, seemingly weighing the impact of her words. "I'm a regulator," she said. "I work for the government, low pay and pretty dull. Do you ever regulate anyone we know?" "Not recently. Back in college, I was always the one helping out the guys, covering for them with irate girlfriends or providing cheat sheets for exams. They've always been pushing boundaries. It's part of what makes them exceptional young men." "So that's your role? You cover for them? What's the point of locking the barn door after the horse has bolted? It won't bring the horse back. Regulations just hold things back. It's better to give bright people a boost and let the rest be sidelined. In the long run, everyone benefits according to their abilities." "And what's your role this weekend? You didn't seem very interested in the party last night," I asked. She hesitated, as if the question had taken her by surprise. I got up and moved to a spot where I could see the road winding down the mountain. There was only one road, the sole exit. I turned and studied Paula closely. Had she considered this possibility? I suddenly realized that the others were entirely absorbed in their own physical desires, oblivious to anything else. But Paula seemed different. She was clearly aware and must have seen the issue just as I did. "I'm just here as the designated sober person, I suppose," she said, "making sure everything goes smoothly, preventing any mishaps. I don't want to interfere unless absolutely necessary." "You mean unless the Golden Boys need you?" "I wouldn't phrase it that way, but it's clear that what's best for them is best for everyone in the long run." "Should we head back down?" I asked. "Why the rush? The way back will be quicker." "Yes, quicker but steeper and potentially dangerous. You could fall." "Why worry when you're on top?" she replied, yet she stood up and began walking down. We made it to the lodge without any issues, but my unease had only grown. We found the others by the pool. My wife was wearing a black bikini that I'd never seen before. The other women were similarly scantily clad. As Paula and I approached, I saw my wife sitting on Gabe's lap and exchanging a kiss with him. "We're back," Paula shouted, causing Gabe and Gloria to break off the kiss. Gabe had a mischievous smile, like a kid caught stealing cookies but knowing there would be no consequences. My wife's smile was too wide and obviously insincere. "Hi, where have you been?" she asked, as if she were talking to a casual acquaintance. There was an awkward silence. I felt my fists clench, but at that moment Paula grabbed my arm. "Well, we skipped lunch, and since we went to the top of the mountain, we deserved some food," Paula said, pulling me towards the cabin. As we were leaving the pool, I heard muffled laughter. I don't remember what Paula cooked for us for dinner. I don't remember if I ate anything. She gave me a glass of black, undiluted Johnny Walker, which burned my throat. "Think before you act," she advised. "It's just one weekend in a happy marriage, and you need to think about family." When we returned to the pool, everyone had already moved into the jacuzzi. The men laughed and the women giggled. My wife was still sitting on Gabe's lap. I couldn't see what their hands were doing underwater, but I assumed they were busy with something. Paula took a place from where she could watch, positioned between the jacuzzi and me. I pretended to pour myself another drink and then defiantly left. As soon as I was out of sight, I threw the booze away. The mixture of jealousy and anger was unsettling. I felt strangely proud that my wife had turned from the chubby girl I married into an amazing athletic woman who was now rightfully desirable. I felt some satisfaction when I learned that men wanted to be in her strong and loving arms. And yet, I couldn't help but wonder what was going on inside her while she was creating this wonderful body. Seeing her with Gabe was weird. I wandered around the lodge grounds, checking to make sure everything was in order and trying to pass the time, at the same time fearing what it might lead to. Realizing that I needed to be alert, I went to our bedroom, forcing myself to try to fall asleep. Lying there and trying to calm my mind, I couldn't stop wondering why my wife was flirting and kissing another man. We have gone through so many hardships together, our struggle with poverty at an early age, the illnesses of our children, and the constant attempts to make ends meet on a modest budget. We were just starting to find stability and comfort, and the children were at an age when they could take care of themselves. My wife had a decent, though modest, career. I was finally earning a good income after many lean years. Our debts were manageable, and our future looked promising. Why jeopardize all that for someone as superficial and self-absorbed as Gabe Zelo? Beneath his charm and bold bravado, there was nothing of substance. Remove the flashy exterior, and there was nothing left. Gabe never designed a site, built a house, or handled a sale. He was the figurehead of a business run by others. He was the wealthy, privileged kid, the wunderkind who appeared out of nowhere with nothing but a self-fashioned persona. What was Gloria thinking? She claimed she just wanted to have some fun this weekend. Was this really the fun she meant? And where would it lead? I did manage to sleep, and when I came downstairs again, they had moved to the great room. Dinner had evidently been served and finished. Drinks continued to flow, and joints were being passed around. Gloria was now sitting on Gabe's lap. There was no pretense about their intimacy. All the women, including Paula, had taken off their bikini tops, and Paula seemed to be sharing Ken with Robin. I walked straight through the room and headed for the kitchen, aiming for the food. As I was microwaving my dinner, Gloria came in. "How are you doing?" she asked. "I've had better days," I replied. She hesitated for a moment before finally speaking up. "I'm spending the night with Gabe," she said. "I've noticed," I replied as the microwave beeped. She offered a somewhat awkward smile as I turned to the microwave. "No, I mean, I'll be in his room tonight." I stood very still, my back turned to her. It was crucial that she didn't see the hurt she was causing me. "I see. And what about our 16 years of marriage?" "That's exactly why I can do this. It's just for the weekend. Next week I'll be all yours again," she said. "Oh, and Gabe won't mind?" She wrapped her arms around me from behind and buried her head in my back. "Of course not, silly. Gabe likes you. He says you two are going places together. This is just a fling, a bit of fun for the weekend." "Okay," she added, emphasizing her point with a hug. "Do I have a choice?" I asked. "Not really, it's decided. I'm just letting you know," she said. She released me and I heard her leave the kitchen. I walked over to where the kitchen overlooks the great room. They were already on the stairs. As they ascended, Gabe looked back, gave me a grin and a thumbs up, as if we were in this together. He whispered something in Gloria's ear, and she turned around to wave and smile at me. I turned back to the kitchen, feeling as though all our shared experiences had been in vain. My wife had abandoned and shamed me. I tossed the microwave meal aside and instead brewed some coffee. This was going to be a long night. As the water heated up, I heard someone enter the kitchen. I looked to see Paula observing me. "I wouldn't have expected you to go for caffeine." "Wouldn't alcohol be a more fitting choice?" she remarked. "Everyone has their own preferences," I replied. "But what exactly are you here for?" She shrugged in response. "I try to help out, keep things from getting out of hand." "And how do you plan to do that?" "By spending the night with me." She chuckled. "No, I draw the line there. But don't worry. You'll get your wife back, and maybe even a little extra." "So," I said, "there's a financial incentive?" "Isn't there always? You can't make a fuss because you're working for the higher-ups. You've got a family to think about. What can you do but accept what's given? It's their world, not yours. It's just the way things are." A sharp scream of pleasure echoed from upstairs. "She seems to be enjoying herself," Paula said with a smirk. "Well, that's fine. A pleasant weekend in the mountains for everyone. These rocks have been around for ages. Our lives are just a fleeting moment to them. Thousands of years ago, they were covered in ice that carved out the streams and gorges we now have to cross to make our world livable. We often forget how fragile our existence is. Remove one small piece, and everything collapses. It's only then we realize how much of our world is an illusion." Paula laughed. "My goodness, you're quite the philosopher." "No, just a man who understands what really matters. Trying to distinguish the real and eternal from the illusions." She must have decided I wouldn't cause any trouble, as she left me alone with my coffee and my pain. About 1 o'clock in the morning, I went up the stairs. As I passed the master bedroom door, I heard my wife's loud screams. She was always very reserved during our intimate moments. He was younger and had much more stamina, which made him a better lover overall. I decided that my wife had found with him what she was looking for. I took a shower, then put on my warmest clothes as it was cold outside. I tried to ignore the noise coming from behind the walls while I waited. It was about 3 a.m. when the house finally fell silent. I waited another half hour before quietly going downstairs. In one of the kitchen cabinets, I found a flashlight, candles, and matches, precautions in case the electricity might go out in harsh reality. It was dark outside. The moon had disappeared below the horizon. The night sounds coming from the mountains would seem like silence to a city dweller. I easily found a shed and a 20-gallon plastic gasoline canister used to refuel cars. I also found a monkey wrench. The generator room door was padlocked, but the rusty hinge mechanism made it easy to remove it with a wrench. A good manual siphon for pumping gas was provided in the house. Refilling the canister took less than 10 minutes. It took a few more minutes to walk around the cabin where my rented SUV was parked. I put the gas canister in the back seat, released the handbrake, and started the car. I let him ride along the road as far as possible before starting him up and driving away. I slowed down as I approached the bridge and crossed it with caution. Once I reached the paved road, I stopped and took my time, ensuring the gas thoroughly soaked into the bridge's wooden surface. The bridge was a solid, well-constructed piece of work, crafted by skilled builders and artisans. It had been installed by people of means to provide a weekend of leisure for those who benefit from others' labor. But the fun was about to end. I dropped a match, which sparked and then ignited. As I stepped back, a burst of heat and flames erupted. The crackling of the burning wood was audible, and the flames were likely visible for miles. I returned to my vehicle and drove away slowly, unhurried. Anyone who might have seen was now trapped on the other side, and I was confident I would be far gone before they realized what had happened. By dawn, I was pulling off the interstate to refuel. I filled up the SUV and left the empty gas can by the pumps. Someone would come across it, and it would be the only link between the fire and me. I returned the SUV around 9 a.m. and picked up my car. After taking a shower and dressing in business casual attire, I headed to the office. I had a couple more tasks to complete to sever my ties with Countryman Real Estate. Bernie had been a good boss, though often forgetful. He would frequently ask me to fetch items he had left in his office. I had keys to every door and file cabinet. Gabe, on the other hand, was meticulous about his office and belongings. He had a new mahogany desk with a built-in safe, but unfortunately for him, he had kept the combination in a file labeled safe. The file was locked away, but I had the key, thanks to Bernie. 20 minutes after arriving at the Countryman offices, I had retrieved the password diary from Gabe's safe and logged into the company's accounts. While I could have easily taken everything, that wasn't my intention. Theft would only result in imprisonment for me. Instead, I transferred the operating account funds to a different account. When I first started at Countryman, we had set up a trust account for deposits, and each new development required a new trust account, as mandated by the state. The original trust account had long been forgotten. Though the old account still appeared in the records, it was no longer active. It was empty until I deposited nearly $20 million into it. I transferred all our cash, and to ensure the effect, I maxed out the line of credit. It might seem like a meaningless move, but nothing was technically stolen. It was all still there. However, it would take several days to locate and retrieve the money. On Tuesday morning, the electronic fund transfers would hit an empty operating account, causing hundreds of payments to bounce. I wasn't certain about the extent of the damage, but we were always in the red with the banks, relying on credit. Removing that credit would make things difficult, at least for a while. Countryman would have to work to restore its creditworthiness. The longer the shortage persisted, the bigger the problem would become. Ideally, Gabe would still be up on the mountain on Tuesday. I would be long gone. As my next step after returning, everything was to draft my resignation letter. Just as I was about to leave the office after placing the letter on Gabe's secretary's desk, my cell phone rang. I glanced at my phone and saw a picture of Gloria. I ignored the call, but soon after a voicemail came through. I knew I shouldn't have listened, but I did anyway. "Baby, where are you?" "They said the car is gone. I'm really worried." "Call me," Gloria's message said. About 30 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Gabe. "Hey, Lyle, you okay? Gloria's really anxious. Call her back, now." I noticed a hint of a threat in his tone, which made me smirk. Gloria called 3 more times that Sunday, and Gabe called once more, sounding even more demanding and insisting I return his call. On Monday morning, I went to pick up the kids from Gloria's parents. As I was heading out, Gloria called again. "Lyle, I'll be back tonight. We need to talk. If you get this message, please call me. I'm very worried, and this is childish," she said. I was betting she wouldn't return. When I arrived at her parents' house, they were waiting for me. "Gloria called and said you might come by alone to pick up the kids," her mother said. "You need to call her, son," her father added. "She says she'll be back tonight. I think it's best if I wait until then." "We need to sort things out in person," I replied, not wanting to delve into details with the in-laws. My in-laws weren't pleased, but there wasn't much they could do. My daughter sensed something was off, but I told her, "It's a grown-up issue between your mother and me, and to be fair to her, we should wait until she returns to talk about it." After getting the kids home and settled, I went to what used to be our bedroom and called Felix Rodriguez. "Hey, Lyle, how are you?" he answered. "I'm not doing well, Felix. I need your help," I replied. Felix was the best family lawyer I knew, both professionally and personally. "What's the issue?" he asked. "I need to file for divorce." "You're kidding, right? You shouldn't joke about things like this." "I'm not joking. Gloria had an affair with Gabriel Zillo, my boss." "Wow. I'm really sorry to hear that. What do you need from me?" Felix and I talked for about an hour, and I scheduled an appointment for late Tuesday afternoon to start the process. Meanwhile, the phone kept ringing with messages from the mountain. It seemed her parents had called, leaving conciliatory messages. Gloria's messages alternated with Gabe's. No threats this time. "Hey, man, if I've messed up, I'm sorry. I don't want this weekend's events to affect our professional relationship." "That would be bad all around, if you get what I mean," Gabe said. Then around 5 in the afternoon, my wife left a message. Lyle, please call. Something's happened here. The bridge is out. We're all trapped. Call me. I need to hear from you." On Tuesday morning, I called up Stephen Pender, an old colleague of mine. First thing, we decided to meet for lunch at a modest sandwich shop in one of the malls. "Are you certain about this?" Stephen asked while munching on a pepper jack tuna sandwich. "It's already done. I've officially resigned," I replied. To underline the point, I received a call from Donna, my secretary at Countryman. "Lyle, they're saying you resigned, but you need to come in. Everything's falling apart here. Something's seriously wrong," Donna said. Sorry, I can't help. I don't work there anymore. You should get in touch with Gabe. They say he's stuck in the mountains, something about a bridge. That's unfortunate. But don't worry. I'm sure it will all get sorted out eventually. Is there something I should know? Steve asked. Not anymore. It's no longer my concern, I said. Well, if you're sure, I think I can increase my last offer by $10,000 per year if you can start right away. Is tomorrow too soon? No, that would be perfect, Steve replied. I started working at Pender and Associates on Wednesday morning. I had just started applying for a job when a visitor came to me. Where's my money, asshole? Gabe Zelo demanded. What kind of money are you talking about? Operating funds. I'm sorry, but you should talk to the company's accountants about this. If I do this, you will be accused of embezzlement, he threatened. I just smiled at him. He managed to get down from this mountain, but where were the operational means? You think you're a smart lawyer, but in reality you're just a jerk who can't please his wife. She had a great time with me, and I will see her whenever I want, he said before leaving. The next day, the police contacted me and asked me to come to the station for questioning. Sorry, I just started a new job and I have very little time. Feel free to send your questions in writing and I will answer. A police officer on the phone tried to explain that this was not part of their procedure, but I objected that as a lawyer, I only resolve issues in writing. After a short exchange, he hung up the phone. I knew that the police would need to check all allegations of embezzlement before taking any action, which would include tracking the money. I expected that they would find them on the account of the company where I transferred them within a few days, and the problem would be solved. After that, it would just be a civil case, and not too serious. I was wrong. It took them 2 weeks to find the missing funds. By that time, Countryman had serious problems. Banks completely blocked her access to loans, and she needed a significant infusion of capital to recover. Late on Friday evening, Gloria arrived with our luggage from the trip. Her key didn't fit anymore because I changed the locks. I met her at the door. She didn't look well. Please, Lyle, let me in. If it wasn't for me, think about the children, she begged. No, I won't, because you don't live here anymore. I parked your car on the street and I guess you still have the keys, I replied. Do you hate me that much? Yes, I said, and closed the door. I assumed she would go to her parents' place. I had Felix deliver the restraining order and divorce petition there. Those few extra days the bridge had given me turned out to be very valuable. Felix managed to prevent her from bothering me, and I obtained temporary custody of the kids. It took her 2 months and probably every cent she had to regain her footing. By then, the divorce was well underway, and we only needed to finalize the details. Gabe Zelo wasn't as fortunate. Countryman Real Estate had to shut down shortly after Labor Day. The next week I had a visitor. He was sitting in my visitor's chair when I returned from my third closing of the day. He was deeply tanned and appeared to be in good health, though he was a bit underdressed for the early northern fall. Bernie, how are you? I greeted him. I'm good, he replied, looking around my modest office. What brings you to the cold north? I asked, sensing this visit was not just a social call. Well, it's like this. Florida is swarming with sharks and not all of them are in the water. I thought it best to come back to what I know, he said. Oh, well, it's good to have you back, I responded, uncertain how to react to his revelation or what he wanted from me. Bernie could see the question in my eyes. I invested a significant amount of money there. I'll have to start over and take things slowly, but it looks like luck is on my side. The company I used to own appears to be available, he said with a grin spreading across his face. I returned his smile and replied, Yes, it does seem that way. We both burst into laughter. So, what do you want from me, you old sea dog? I asked. Here's the deal. I need a partner. Given my age, the bankers doubt that any business I start will have lasting power. You and I worked well together before, so what do you think? I'm low on funds. I'm going through a divorce, as you might have heard, I said. Yes, I've heard, he acknowledged. I wondered how much he actually knew. News had a way of spreading. Why not let me take 10% of the share, he proposed. Make it 50%. Be reasonable. You just said you don't have money to invest. I'm guessing you don't have much either. But I'll agree to 45%, I countered. Come on, 25% is fair. Not enough. I'll take 40% and an option to buy an additional 10% in 10 years. All right, but I hope I'm around to see that, he said, with a hint of dark humor about my own eventual funeral. Bernie and I re-entered the real estate business. We purchased every lot that Countryman had previously owned at a reduced price from the banks that now held them, using funds from the same banks. I expected challenges, but we quickly established a steady business, constructing and selling houses. Life continued, and so did my divorce, which primarily revolved around custody and visitation disputes. Ultimately, we devised a complex joint custody and visitation schedule. That's why on Christmas Eve, I was heading back to a dark and empty house. Gloria had the children for Christmas Eve, while I was scheduled to have them on Christmas Day. Since Christmas fell on a Sunday, they were to return to her care on Monday, which she had off. The children despised these arrangements. As I neared the house, I spotted a figure sitting on the steps, wrapped up against the cold and the falling light snow. It wasn't until I was nearly upon her that I realized it was my ex-wife. "Gloria, what are you doing here?" I asked. She didn't look well at all. She was even thinner than the last time I saw her, and her eyes seemed hollow and vacant. It was clear she had been crying recently. "I want to come home," she cried out. "Where are the children?" I asked, ignoring her plea. "With my parents. They want to come home too. We all want to be a family again in our little house. What you've done to us isn't fair." "I didn't do anything." "Oh, yes, you did. I made a mistake. A serious and painful mistake, but it was just one mistake. You're the one who ruined our family," she said, her voice growing angry. She took a deep breath to steady herself. "I promised I wouldn't lose my temper. But please understand, I have a lot of anger about this," she said. "You have anger issues." I was taken aback. "Don't play innocent. You're far from that. You just happen to come out ahead of everyone else. I'm not naive, Lyle. You were never perfect. I know I hurt you, but that was never my intention." "Really? Do you think that being intimate with another man right in front of my eyes won't hurt me?" I said. She turned away. My words seemed to have struck a nerve. I saw her wipe her eyes with her back turned to me. It was clear she was crying. Her voice was soft and pained, but steady. "I was always the chubby girl, the last one asked to dance. I had to accept whoever asked me. I was a good girl, so I spent a lot of time fending off unwanted advances. I waited for the right man throughout high school and most of college. When I met you, I knew you were the right man. I was a virgin when we got married. I didn't make a big deal out of it, but I thought you knew. You weren't a prince then, and you aren't one now. You were just an ordinary guy, but I loved you with all my heart. Yes, you were a bit smarter and more ambitious than most, but we were always struggling financially. I adjusted my expectations because I loved you. It hurt me to see you work so hard. Then Gabriel came along and things seemed to improve. He was everything a woman could want in a man. For once, a prince wanted me. It was flattering. After the Christmas party, he kept calling me. It wasn't serious, just flirting. You know, the kind of attention that beautiful women often get. It's not that I don't get approached, but not by the handsome, powerful elites. He said nice things about you, about how fortunate I was to have a great guy like you. I'll bet he just fucking adored me, I said. He did. He mentioned how hard you worked and how he wanted to reward you. I understood that if I was nice to him, he would look out for you. I suppose I let him convince me that you would benefit if I gave in to him. It's true. But I also wanted him. It was like I had this intense craving driving me toward him. I was torn between hoping something would happen that weekend and dreading it. But once we arrived, my resistance started to crumble. I turned to you. I did. I asked you, "What? Are you serious?" You told me you were going to bed with him. All right, I didn't spell it out, but you knew what was going on and you didn't object, she said, turning to me with tears streaming down her face and dripping from her chin. Her nose was running. I trusted you. We had 16 years together that night. How could you betray me like this? I said. But that's exactly the point. We loved each other. It was just a fling. It didn't compare to what we had before and what we would have after. Are you really so out of touch that you think after hearing you moan with pleasure for him we could have anything together? Oh, come on. You can't be that naive. It was all an act. I wanted to please him. I put on a show. Men like that need and expect it. I don't normally act like that in bed, and after 16 years of making love to me, you should know that. What I know is what you did, how you humiliated me. You chose him over me, the useless men who contribute nothing and take everything. He's so powerful, right? Well, where is he now? What happened when the crisis hit? I'll tell you. He folded. We live in a society that favors the few over the many based on some myth of inherent genius. So tell me, how did that genius get off the mountain so quickly? He called for a helicopter. By then he knew you had sabotaged the business. It was pretty clear you burned the bridge. He thought you stole his money. The others began to panic. Paula kept insisting this couldn't be happening, that it wasn't how things were supposed to work. When the helicopter arrived, there was only space for Gabe, and the rest of us were left behind. I assumed the National Guard eventually set up a temporary bridge to rescue us. Sharon and I made the trip back together. By then, her husband knew the full story. She was in as much trouble as I was, and poor Robin's fiancé had ended their engagement. Glenn and Ken were also in trouble, but it seems Paula managed to help them out. It seems that only Gabe and we ordinary people truly suffered. But hasn't there been enough pain? She asked, looking at me with hope. Gloria's words carried a lot of truth. I wasn't entirely innocent. I had worked for Gabe, but unlike the rest of the world, I was never deceived. I knew the truth, but refused to face it. I can't get over how it all unfolded. They only offered false promises. If you look closely, you see the trap, yet no one did. The illusion was far more appealing than reality. We fought through tough times, but things were getting better. What you and Gabe took from me was the security of my home. I can never get that back, because those bastards proved that what I believed in was a lie. You and I were a lie, I said as I stood up and moved towards the door of the dark, empty house. She wouldn't give up. Answer me this, she said. Would you be better off alone, or would it be better with me and the kids around the Christmas tree tonight? I looked at her. It would be so easy to hold her, to love her, to bring the kids home to sleep in their own house on Christmas Eve, and to pretend that nothing had happened. But all I could say was, I don't know. That's a good question, but I don't have an answer. With that, we turned away from each other. What's in our past can't be changed. We must live for our future.